Designed to help you fall asleep. On Snoozecast, we read excerpts from public domain works and occasionally original stories. Listen to us on snoozecast.com, like our Facebook page, and follow us on Instagram. We'd like to thank our listeners. If you enjoy our show, please write us a review on the Apple Podcasts app or wherever you listen. Also, share it with a friend. This episode is brought to you by Constellations in the Sky. Tonight, by listener request, we'll be reading two versions of a Chinese folk tale called The Cowherd and the Weaver, a story about star-crossed lovers that spurred the Chinese equivalent of Valentine's Day, the Qixi Festival, and also in Japan, the Star Festival, Tanabata. Let's get cozy. Close your eyes. Relax your body into the softness of your bed. Now, take a few deep breaths. The Herd Boy and the Weaving Maiden, from the Chinese fairy book. Note: The Herd Boy and the Weaving Maiden is retold after an oral source. The Herd Boy is a constellation in Aquila, the Weaving Maiden one in Lyra. The Silver River, which separates them, is the Milky Way. The 7th day of the 7th month is the festival of their reunion. The ruler of the heavens has 9 daughters in all, who dwell in the 9 heavens. The Herd Boy was the child of poor people. When he was 12 years old, he took service with a farmer to herd his cow. After a few years, the cow had grown large and fat, and her hair shone like yellow gold. She must have been a cow of the gods. One day, while he had her out at pasture in the mountains, she suddenly began to speak to the Herd Boy in a human voice, as follows: "This is the 7th day. Now the white jade ruler has 9 daughters who bathe this day in the sea of heaven. The 7th daughter is beautiful and wise beyond all measure. She spins the cloud silk for the king and queen of heaven, and presides over the weaving which maidens do on earth. It is for this reason she is called the Weaving Maiden, and if you go and take away her clothes while she bathes, you may become her husband and gain immortality." "But she is up in heaven," said the Herd Boy, "and how can I get there?" "I will carry you there," answered the yellow cow. So the Herd Boy climbed on the cow's back. In a moment, clouds began to stream out of her hoofs, and she rose into the air. About his ears there was a whistling like the sound of the wind, and they flew along as swiftly as lightning. Suddenly, the cow stopped. "Now we are here," she said. Then round about him the herd boy saw forest of chrysoprase and apple-green gemstone and trees of jade. The grass was of jasper and the flowers of coral. In the midst of all this splendor lay a great sea, covering some 500 acres. Its green waves rose and fell, and fishes with golden scales were swimming about in it. In addition, there were countless magic birds who winged above it and sang. Even in the distance, the herd boy could see the 9 maidens in the water. They had all laid down their clothes on the shore. "Take the red clothes quickly," said the cow, "and hide away with them in the forest. And though she ask you for them never so sweetly, do not give them back to her until she has promised to become your wife." Then the herd boy hastily got down from the cow's back, seized the red clothes, and ran away. At the same moment the 9 maidens noticed him and were much frightened. They cried, "O youth, whence do you come, that you dare to take our clothes? Put them down again, quickly." But the herd boy did not let what they said trouble him, but crouched down behind one of the jade trees. Then 8 of the maidens hastily came ashore and drew on their clothes. "Our 7th sister," said they, "whom heaven has destined to be yours, has come to you. We will leave her alone with you." The weaving maiden was still crouching in the water. But the herd boy stood before her and laughed. He said, "If you will promise to be my wife, then I will give you your clothes." But this did not suit the weaving maiden. She said, "I am a daughter of the ruler of the gods, and may not marry without his command. Give back my clothes to me quickly, or else my father will punish you." Then the yellow cow said, "You have been destined for each other by fate, and I will be glad to arrange your marriage, and your father, the ruler of the gods, will make no objection. Of that I am sure." The weaving maiden replied, "You are an unreasoning animal. How could you arrange our marriage?" The cow said, "Do you see that old willow tree there on the shore? Just give it a trial and ask it. If the willow tree speaks, then heaven wishes your union." And the weaving maiden asked the willow. The willow replied in a human voice, "This is the 7th day. The herd boy his court to the weaver doth pay." And the weaving maiden was satisfied with the verdict. The herd boy laid down her clothes and went on ahead. The weaving maiden drew them on and followed him, and thus they became man and wife. But after 7 days, she took leave of him. She said, "The ruler of heaven has ordered me to look after my weaving. If I delay too long, I fear that he will punish me. Yet, although we have to part now, we will meet again, in spite of it." When she had said these words, she really went away. The herd boy ran after her But when he was quite near, she took one of the long needles from her hair and drew a line with it right across the sky, and this line turned into the Silver River. And thus they now stand, separated by the river, what we now call the Milky Way, and watch for one another. And since that time they meet once every year, on the eve of the seventh day. When that time comes, then all the crows in the world of men come flying, and form a bridge over which the weaving maiden crosses the Silver River. And on that day you will not see a single crow in the trees from morning to night, no doubt because of the reason I have mentioned. And besides, a fine rain often falls on the evening of the seventh day. Then the women and old grandmothers say to one another, "Those are the tears which the herd boy and the weaving maiden shed at parting." And for this reason, the seventh day is a rain festival. To the west of the Silver River is the constellation of the weaving maiden, consisting of 3 stars, and directly in front of it are 3 other stars in the form of a triangle. It is said that once the herd boy was angry because the weaving maiden had not wished to cross the Silver River, and had thrown his yoke at her, which fell down just in front of her feet. East of the Silver River is the herd boy's constellation, consisting of 6 stars. To one side of it are countless little stars, which form a constellation pointed at both ends and somewhat broader in the middle. It is said that the weaving maiden in turn threw her spindle at the herd boy, but that she did not hit him, the spindle falling down to one side of him. Here is another version of the story, The Herdsman and the Weaver Girl, from Myths and Legends of China, written by E.T.C. Warner. In the myths and legends which have clustered about the observations of the stars by the Chinese, there are subjects for pictorial illustration without number. One of these stories is the fable of Aquila and Vega, known in Chinese mythology as the herdsman and the weaver girl. The latter, the daughter of the sun god, was so constantly busied with her loom that her father became worried at her close habits and thought that by marrying her to a neighbor who herded cattle on the banks of the silver stream of heaven, the Milky Way, she might awake to a brighter manner of living. No sooner did the maiden become wife than her habits and character utterly changed for the worse. She became not only very merry and lively, but quite forsook loom and needle, giving up her nights and days to play and idleness. No silly lover could have been more foolish than she. The Sun King, in great wrath at all this, concluded that the husband was the cause of it, and determined to separate the couple. So he ordered him to remove to the other side of this river of stars, and told him that hereafter they should meet only once a year, on the 7th night of the 7th month. to make a bridge over the flood of stars, the Sun King called myriads of magpies, who thereupon flew together, and, making a bridge, supported the poor lover on their wings and backs as if on a roadway of solid land. So, bidding his weeping wife farewell, the lover husband sorrowfully crossed the river of heaven, and all the magpies instantly flew away. But the two were separated, the one to lead his ox, the other to ply her shuttle during the long hours of the day with diligent toil, and the Sun King again rejoiced in his daughter's industry. At last the time for their reunion drew near, and only one fear possessed the loving wife. What if it should rain? For the river of heaven is always full to the brim, and one extra drop causes a flood which sweeps away even the bird bridge. But not a drop fell. All the heavens were clear. The magpies flew joyfully in myriads, making a way for the tiny feet of the little lady. Trembling with joy and with heart fluttering more than the bridge of wings, she crossed the river of heaven and was in the arms of her husband. This she did every year. The husband stayed on his side of the river, and the wife came to him on the Magpie Bridge, save on the sad occasions when it rained. So every year the people hope for clear weather, and the happy festival is celebrated alike by old and young. These two constellations are worshipped principally by women, that they may gain cunning in the arts of needlework and making of fancy flowers. Watermelons, fruits, vegetables, and cakes are placed with incense in the reception room, and before these offerings are performed, the kneeling and the knocking of the head on the ground in the usual way.